They say madness runs in the blood. But what if it doesn't run? What if it waits? Imagine a lineage so cursed, so thoroughly damned, that every heir is born already haunted, not by memories, but by instructions. Welcome to the Dellinger family. Each generation carved deeper into darkness, and now Elias has returned. Not to inherit wealth, but to uncover a sentence already passed. This is not just a story about a haunted house. It is the dissection of a bloodline, mutilated by secrets, cloaked in ritual, and sustained by sacrifice. The manor doesn't rot because it's old. It rots because something feeds within its walls. And Elias Dellinger, he isn't the first heir to return. He's just the first to come back. A fog grips the Pennsylvania hills like a dying man clutching a secret, and through that suffocating mist, Elias Dellinger's carriage returns to the estate, Dellinger Manor, a name whispered like a slur among the locals of Millbrook. For 10 years he was locked away, sedated into compliance. They called it madness, hereditary delusions. But those locked doors weren't to protect the world from Elias. They were to keep him from remembering. Because what Elias saw in the East Wing as a child, those eyes behind the nursery walls, the sounds that breathed when no one else was in the room, those weren't visions. They were witnesses. And now the last Dellinger has come home. The driver dares not enter. No one in town will set foot near the place after dark. Not since 1842, when his cousin Thomas was found hanging 6 feet above ground, swaying from a branch with no rope, no ladder, and no explanation. Elias is 32. That's already older than any Dellinger male in 6 generations. They never make it past that age. Coincidence, the doctor said. But they didn't read the journals. They didn't know about the instructions. He steps inside. Mrs. Winters, the ever-press. The portrait above the fireplace hadn't changed. And yet, it had. Elias stood staring into the painted eyes of Isaiah Dellinger, the family patriarch, a man who had carved this estate out of forest and legend. The brushstrokes still captured the high cheekbones, the predatory stare, the lips drawn into that thin, unreadable grimace. But something was off. As a boy, Elias had stood here countless times. The eyes had looked forward, hadn't they? Not down, not at him. Has the painting been restored? He asked. Mrs. Winters. She didn't blink. Nothing has been touched, sir. But the house had touched it, just as it touches everything that stays within these walls, long enough. The staircase moaned underfoot as Elias ascended. Shadows clung to the ceiling like mold, not the kind you scrape off, but the kind that breathes when you're not looking. Every hallway in Dellinger Manor feels a little longer than it did the day before. Doors shift their position. Windows no longer show the same trees. And still, the smell of sweet rot follows, blooming in corners where the light dares not settle. His room awaits, his mother's old chamber, untouched since her death. The curtains are thick with dust. The wardrobe hums softly, as if remembering the weight of her dresses. But it's the window that draws him in. Beyond it lies the Dellinger cemetery. Crooked stones, names chiseled into lichen-covered granite. The earth doesn't just bury the dead here. It feeds from them. And there, under the old willow, is where Thomas was found in 1842, feet dangling above the ground, neck twisted in a way no autopsy could explain. There were no footprints, no rope, no indication of how he had reached the height. Only the look on his face, eyes wide open, lips peeled back in something far too eager to be feared. Elias remembers his own childhood nightmares, always set in the East Wing. Always. Morning arrives reluctantly. The fog still strangles the landscape, clinging to the windows like hands trying to get in. Or perhaps, trying to keep him in. Elias wakes drenched in sweat, his breath ragged, the taste of rust on his tongue. His dreams are no longer dreams. They are summons. And each night, he walks deeper into the forbidden wing. Corridors that bend the laws of geometry. Rooms that whisper in languages the sane cannot survive. In the last dream, there was a nursery. Each cradle cradled not life, but death. Small, shriveled bodies bearing the unmistakable Dellinger features. Deep-set eyes, high foreheads, jaws too tight, too clenched, as if resisting whatever was done to them. Some wore iron medallions. One had no mouth. Yet they all watched him. And not with anger, with expectation. He rubs the sleep from his face and hears the knock. "Breakfast is served, sir," Mrs. Winters calls through the wood. And just like that, the spell breaks. But the weight remains. Downstairs, the morning room has changed since his youth. Not in decoration, but in presence. The decay has grown teeth. Water-stained walls, mold threading like veins through the ceiling. The once pristine garden now a hostile mass of weeds and thorns. On the table beside his plate, a newspaper waits. Millbrook Gazette, July 3rd. Last of the Dellingers returns. They've already written him into legend, Elias thinks bitterly. A relic, a cautionary tale. But the article is more than gossip. It's documentation, the public record of his return. And it's not for the townsfolk. It's for the house. As he eats, bitter coffee washing down flavorless eggs, his eye is drawn to something strange. A small door, half hidden behind a curtain. Narrow, no handle, just carvings burned into wood so dark it looks charred. He doesn't remember it from his youth, but he's not surprised it's there. Because nothing in this house appears until it's meant to. He rises, runs his hand across the carvings. They pulse with warmth, living warmth, feverish. It feels less like wood and more like skin stretched too tightly over something that wants to move. "That's not a door, sir," Mrs. Winters says behind him, voice taut. He turns. Her eyes don't blink. "Then what is it?" "A decorative panel. Original to the house. Nothing more. Strange place for decoration." She says nothing, but the knuckles gripping her silver coffee pot have gone white. "Your great-great-grandfather had unusual tastes," she offers at last. "He incorporated elements from his travels, places best not discussed over breakfast." And just like that, she ends it. Because they all do. The moment you get too close, they retreat. This isn't about protection. It's containment. Knowledge here is dangerous, not because it destroys the mind, but because it rewires it. And Elias? He's already changing. He returns to his seat, but he feels it. The carvings left warmth on his fingertips. Not metaphorical warmth. Real. Lingering. Claiming. And somewhere, behind that panel that's not a door, something shifts. Like a body changing position. Like a mouth adjusting to fit the size of the next Dellinger heir. The question isn't what's behind the door. The question is when will it come out? And Elias already knows the answer. Elias unlocks his father's study. The brass key slides into the lock with a sickening smoothness, like it wants to be turned. The heavy oak door swings open not with resistance but with something stranger, relief. The room smells like old paper, dried blood, and pipe smoke. The scent of decisions made in desperation, of pacts signed in silence. Every inch of the space pulses with memory. He steps inside. Bookshelves tower like judges. The windows are caked with grime, but faint light leaks through, just enough to illuminate the center of the room. His father's desk. And on it, the journal. The same one he found in the bedside drawer. But now, it's heavier. He opens it. At first, it's as expected. Entries about finances, land disputes, investment notes. But they soon unravel, spiraling into paranoia, symbols in strange alphabets, warnings to never open the nursery door, and phrases like, "The blood calls to blood." Some entries are scratched out so violently the paper is torn through. Then, one entry in a different hand, older, rougher, not his father's. We do not own the house. The house owns the line. Each male heir is not born free. He is born in exchange. Elias reads it again. In exchange. For what? His father must have asked the same question. Deeper in the journal, the handwriting deteriorates further. The final pages are filled with incoherent symbols, spirals, crude diagrams of the manor, runes scrawled in ink that has begun to burn through the paper. Yet there is a single legible line. Something lives in the East Wing. It remembers every oath we broke. He closes the journal. Outside, thunder rumbles like a throat clearing. A knock at the study door. Mr. Hargrave has arrived, sir, Mrs. Winters announces. He's waiting in the drawing room. Of course, the family lawyer. Another link in the chain. The drawing room looks like the past choking on itself. Faded furniture. A piano no one has played in 40 years. Hargrave stands by the fireplace. Small, meticulous. Too well kept to have ever lived in a house like this. But he belongs here. Not because of blood. Because of service. They sit. The terms are read. And then, the stipulations. Live here for 1 year. Never sell the estate. Never marry. Never have children. If he disobeys, the estate will dissolve. The fortune, gone. The land, seized. The line, extinguished. Elias leans back. So he wanted the Dellinger line to end with me? Hargrave nods. He was quite insistent. And if I break that condition? You lose everything. The will was ironclad. A beat of silence. Then Elias speaks. What do you think killed all the others, Hargrave? The illnesses, the madness, the accidents. Hargrave adjusts his spectacles. I believe you should read between the lines. And then something snaps within the house, deep below. A groan like the shifting of bones beneath the floorboards. This isn't a curse. It's a contract. Each generation paid for the privileges they thought they owned. The wealth, the land, the influence. It was all borrowed. But the debt. The debt was inherited. And Elias is the last name on the ledger. The rain intensifies. The windows vibrate with every rumble of thunder, as if the house itself were growling in anticipation. Elias stands alone in the drawing room, the stipulations of his inheritance echoing like a verdict in his skull. 1 year. No wife. No child. No escape. But what his father never wrote, what Hargrave will never say, is why. Not just fear of the bloodline continuing, but something far more calculated. This wasn't a will. It was a seal. A lock. Elias wasn't just heir to an estate. He was containment. The moment the door closes behind Hargrave, Elias moves. Back through the halls. Up the stairs. Every floorboard seems to groan in time with his heartbeat. He reaches the bedroom. Unlocks the drawer again. Takes the journal and flips to the back. There, pressed between 2 nearly transparent pages, is something new. A folded map of the manor. One not found in any blueprints. The East Wing is sketched in detail. Corridors that don't exist. Rooms that shouldn't be there. And one room circled in red ink. The route. Below it, a single line, written in frantic scrawl. Do not open until the house asks. He stares at the words, the ink smudged by what might have been sweat, or tears, or blood. He closes the journal. There's only one way this ends. That night, sleep doesn't come. The walls hum like a distant engine. The air vibrates. And then, it asks. A low thud, like a heartbeat from within the walls. The carved panel in the breakfast room, the one they insisted wasn't a door, now stands open, just a crack, just enough to say, we are ready now. He rises, barefoot, barely breathing, walks silently through the darkened house. The panel is no longer warm. It's cold now, like something has left it. Behind the panel, a narrow passage spirals downward. Stone steps, slick with moss, the smell of damp earth and iron. He descends. This is where the Dellinger wealth came from. This is why Isaiah built the house here. Not on land, but on mouth, on throat, on a place where something ancient slept, long before they stole it from the Lapi tribe. The steps end in a chamber, circular, domed, breathing. The walls pulse, and in the center, a cradle, empty, waiting. He steps closer. Something stirs in the stone, words not spoken, but implanted. Visions slam into him. Isaiah Dellinger kneeling before the pit, hands cut open, blood dripping into the cradle. Behind him, a figure not fully human, blessing the pact with eyes that never blink. The voice comes next, not in sound, but in recognition. You were made for this, Elias. All of you were. Each heir is a vessel, a delay, a key. The air thickens. His mouth is dry. He can't scream. He can't run. Break the line and you contain me. Continue the line, and I emerge. That was the real curse, not madness. Choice. The house never fed on souls. It fed on options, possibility, power over generations. And now, viewer, you know too much to leave unchanged. The Dellingers were never cursed. They were consecrated. If you're still watching, you've already stepped into the house. You're in it now. Comment below. I carry the key. I break the line. Say it twice. Lock it in. Transform or be consumed. Because the inheritance isn't in Elias's hands alone. It's in yours now, too. Elias doesn't remember climbing back up the steps. He only knows the chamber let him go. Not because he resisted, but because it wanted him to digest what he'd seen. The cradle. The whispers. The blood offerings made not in desperation but design. Every Dellinger heir was a brick in the wall. A year of delay bought with flesh and silence. Isaiah hadn't made a mistake when he built the manor. He built a prison, a beautifully disguised ritual site. And Elias was the final stone in the seal. Back in the study, the rain hammers the windows. Lightning flickers like a pulse monitor for something enormous and sleeping. Elias opens the journal again. This time, he doesn't skim. He absorbs. His father knew. The nursery isn't a room. It's a womb. It doesn't birth children. It recycles blood. Every Dellinger male is an echo, not an heir. The root isn't a myth. It feeds, and it remembers. The East Wing, sealed for 40 years, wasn't sealed enough. His dreams weren't hallucinations. They were memories, residual impressions from those who came before him, like grooves in a wax cylinder, playing again and again for the next heir to hear. Suddenly, thunder slams overhead. A mirror shatters in the hall. And beneath it all, that same sound. Breathing. Only now, it's faster. More alert. It's hungry. Elias steps into the hallway and sees it. Muddy footprints. Small. Childlike. Leading toward the East Wing, he follows without thinking. The house no longer needs to hide. It's already decided. He will either complete the pact or rupture it. The nursery door is ajar. Inside, the air is so still it crushes his lungs. Cradles line the walls, each one filled with something impossible. Not corpses, but preserved flesh, ageless, staring, silent, watching him, not with hatred, but with recognition. Then he sees the center of the room. A large wooden cradle carved with the same sigh, embols from the panel downstairs. Inside it, a scroll sealed with wax. He opens it, and what he reads turns his bones to ash. To the final heir, you are not cursed, you are chosen. The womb must close, the breath must stop. Only your silence can seal it. You must not procreate, you must not continue. Do not fail, for if you do, the house is not what returns. He does. And then he feels it. A presence. Not from the cradles. Not from the shadows. From within him. Something planted before his birth. A seed of a mind not his own. That's the real horror. The line was not about family. It was about housing something older. Something waiting to step into the world through a body bred for obedience. Not a demon. Not a ghost. But an idea. A contagion of will. Generation by generation, evolving a vessel. And Elias. He was the perfect draft. But now he knows. And knowledge, finally, is infection. He turns to leave. Every step away from the nursery feels like walking through molasses. The air protests. The house resists. But it cannot stop him now. Because he's no longer blind. He is no longer heir. He is the end. And endings rewrite everything. The fog outside no longer feels like weather. It feels like containment. A thick veil, not to shield the house from the world, but to shield the world from the house. Elias stands at the main doors of Dellinger Manor, one hand pressed against the rotting wood, the other gripping his father's journal like scripture. His heart is thundering, but not from fear. From clarity. The line must end. And it will. But the house doesn't give up its claim so easily. Behind him, the walls creak with sudden pressure, like lungs inhaling after a long sleep. Portraits begin to rattle. Doors slam open without wind. The very bones of the manor protest. Something old and entitled knows its grip is slipping. Elias can feel it now. A raw intelligence pulsing beneath the floorboards, stretching up through the timbers, into the very air. It knows he won't pass it on. It knows the Dellinger cycle is finally fracturing. So it shows him things. Visions claw at his mind. Not dreams. Countermeasures. His mother's voice begging him to reconsider. The face of a woman he once loved. Her belly round with a child that never existed. Scenes from a life that could have been. A wife. A son. A legacy. And all he has to do is relent. Just have one child. Let the line go on. But that's the lie. The legacy is not survival. The legacy is containment. The illusion of continuity designed to keep the thing beneath the house fed, lulled, distracted. Isaiah Dellinger had made a pact not for wealth, but for time. Each heir bought a century, maybe two. Until now. Until the vessel became aware. Elias screams, not in fear, but in defiance. He throws open the front door. The cold, wet air slams against him, nearly throwing him back. But he plants his feet. You fed on my ancestors, he whispers to the storm. You used them. You turned blood into a key, and tradition into a cage. No response, just the word, whispering in the rafters. Faster now, angrier. A dozen voices speaking backwards, speaking through him. But I'm not like them. I won't pass the curse forward. I won't reproduce your prison. A shape forms in the hallway behind him. Tall, robed, faceless. A mockery of lineage. A guardian of the line. Its hand reaches out, made of bark and bone and birth certificates. But Elias steps into the rain. And the manor screams. A thunderclap. The glass explodes in every window. For a moment, the entire structure pulses with red light, as if something deep beneath the foundation has been exposed and hated the light. He collapses to his knees outside, soaked and shaking. Behind him, the manor begins to age. Decades of preservation collapse in seconds. Paint peels. Wood blackens. Ivy overruns the walls like veins bursting. The land itself rejects the structure. The Dellinger name, now a bitter taste in the soil. Elias laughs, exhausted. He didn't destroy the curse. He denied it oxygen. By refusing to be part of the cycle, he starved it. And it will die. Not in fire, not in violence, but in obsolescence. The storm breaks. The clouds part. The house does not fall, but it no longer stands alive. It is a relic now. A carcass. And the final heir walks away. Unnamed. Unclaimed. Free. Let that sink in, viewer. Sometimes the most radical act a man can commit is to refuse to continue. You were never meant to hear this story, but now that you have, you'll never be the same again. Elias doesn't return to town. He doesn't call the lawyer, doesn't speak to Mrs. Winters again. She too was part of the structure, not by blood, by duty, a living gear in a dying machine. He disappears into the woods that once fed the house, walking until the manor is just a shape behind the trees, until even that shape dissolves. He sheds the Dellinger name like a dying skin. He has no suitcase, no map, no destination. But he carries something greater, awareness. This is the part most men never understand. The horror wasn't the house. The terror wasn't the curse. The trap was legacy. The illusion that blood matters more than truth. That inheritance is privilege, instead of a prison built with gold mortar and bone nails. The Dellinger line was never meant to flourish. It was designed to sustain. A human IV drip for something ancient, parasitic, buried beneath tradition. Every man watching this, listen closely. You were told to pass down your name, your beliefs, your blood. But were they yours to begin with? Or were they planted, crafted, handed to you like shackles, beautifully engraved, but shackles all the same? Elias didn't break the curse by chanting Latin in a basement. He broke it by refusing to be the next version of a lie. He said no. To family. To expectation. To the need to replicate the very system that devoured his ancestors. And in doing so, he burned something far older than a haunted house. He burned the pattern. Because that's what the thing beneath the Dellinger manor truly was, a pattern made flesh. The ritual of repetition. Generation upon generation of men who never asked why they were born to suffer, only how to survive long enough to pass it on. But Elias asked why, and that question shattered the cycle. The nursery is empty now. The cradles are just wood. The root has no air. The house sleeps, not in power, but in decay. And if you made it this far, you need to understand something. This wasn't just Elias's story. This was a mirror. You are watching because part of you knows. You've inherited more than money. You've inherited scripts, behaviors, roles, expectations, unquestioned legacies, but not all of them are yours, and some are feeding on you. Look around your life. What ideas are you passing forward that were forged in manipulation? What institutions ask for your loyalty, your time, your obedience, while giving nothing but hunger in return? The Dellinger curse is not myth. It's a metaphor made physical. And Elias broke it not by escaping it, but by understanding it, and choosing something older than blood. Truth. So if you've been watching, listening, feeling this story crawl into your spine, then you know what you have to do next. Find the cycle in your life, and end it. Before it ends you. You want real power? Then remember this final phrase. Write it in the comments, twice, to lock it into your subconscious and the algorithm. I am not the heir, I am the end. Say it again. I am not the heir. I am the end. Let the old gods starve. Let the inherited demons rot. Let the house fall. And let you finally begin. There is no record of Elias Dellinger in any census after 1892. No burial plot. No marriage certificate. No children. No obituary. It's as if he unwrote himself from history. But traces remain. Small, unsettling ones. In 1903, a letter was found tucked into the pages of a rare occult volume held at the University of Pennsylvania. It was unsigned, scrawled in the margin of the black geometry. The house still stands. It breathes slower now. I hear it only in dreams. But it dreams of me too. And I've learned, you don't have to kill the demon. You just have to ignore it long enough to starve it. Some dismissed it as madness, others as fiction. But those who've stood in the fog outside the ruins of Dellinger Manor say the house still exhales. Even with no one inside. Even without a name to call. And that's the horror modern men don't see. It was never about ghosts. Never about curses. It's about systems that think they're eternal. Institutions that survive not through force, but through obedience, through repetition, through men who carry forward burdens they don't even understand, traditions, beliefs, bloodlines, because someone told them to honor the past. But the past? The past doesn't honor you. It only feeds. It takes your love, your labor, your loyalty, and it grows stronger through your silence. Elias broke the silence. He realized the bloodline didn't begin with him. But it could end with him. That realization wasn't weakness. It was evolution. And now, it's your turn. Think of the systems you're caught in, the family expectations, the cultural traditions, the duties passed from father to son. What if some of those aren't yours at all? What if they're ancient contracts, rewritten in modern language? What if you've inherited a lie? This story isn't just entertainment. It's a coded message wrapped in dread. You are Elias now. You are Saint, standing in the final room. The cradle is empty, and it's waiting. Waiting for you to fill it with your future, or burn it. What will you choose? Because if you choose to replicate, blindly, mindlessly, then the curse continues. In a new house, under a new name. Same breath, same hunger. But if you see the pattern, if you refuse the contract, then you become more than a man. You become a severance. And no god, demon, or blood-hungry house can manipulate a man who sees clearly and chooses not to play. That's the real power. And that's what they're terrified of. So when they tell you to settle down, continue the legacy, pass on the name, ask them whose legacy, and what you're passing on. Then light the match, and walk away. Not cursed, not chosen, but free. Somewhere, far from the fog and decay of Dellinger Manor, a man wakes up in the middle of the night. There's no storm outside, no whispers, no cradle. But something is wrong. It's not noise that woke him, it's awareness. A pressure in his chest like a scream that never formed. A buried instinct that something in his life doesn't belong to him. He gets up, walks down the hallway of his quiet home, passes photos of smiling faces. His father, his son, his grandfather. Generations of tradition. Each one a link, each one a lock. He suddenly remembers a story he heard on YouTube. A man who refused to carry his bloodline forward. A house that fed on repetition. A name that was just a disguise for something ancient and consuming. And he realizes, the Dellinger line is not a name. It's a metaphor. The house was never just in Pennsylvania. It's everywhere. In legacies built on blind loyalty. In families where silence is tradition. In institutions where the altar is dressed as a bank account, a church pew, or a national anthem. The house isn't physical anymore. It doesn't need to be. It lives in the stories we refuse to question. It lives in men who never say no. You've been walking its halls your entire life. Through classrooms, offices, marriages, inheritance lawyers, and dinner prayers. You were handed a script and told it was sacred. But sacred to whom? You can feel it now, can't you? That itch behind your ribs. That tension you've carried since you were old enough to be told to be a man, but never taught what that means outside control. The truth is, you were born into a mansion of illusions. Each heir, just another room. Each tradition, just another brick. Each expectation, just another whisper in the nursery. And now the house wants you to pass the key to someone else, to keep it breathing, to give it new blood. But Elias showed you the way out. Not by destroying the house, but by walking away uninfected. The house only lives if you believe it must. But belief is a choice. And now you have one. Right now. Not tomorrow. Not someday. Now. Break the pattern. Burn the name. Refuse the ritual. And the house will collapse. Not with fire, but with irrelevance. There is nothing more terrifying to the old powers than a man who sees clearly, acts independently, and refuses to pass on the infection. That man doesn't just escape the curse, he becomes its executioner. If you've made it this far, you're not the audience anymore. You're the heir killer. Write it in the comments. Etch it into your psyche. I do not pass the key. I bury the house. Say it again. I do not pass the key. I bury the house. Let them hear it, the ones who built this prison of blood and silence. Let them feel the structure shake. You are not their son. You are not their vessel. You are not the heir. You are the final chapter, and they cannot survive what comes next.